Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the Bon Air Chicken Farm in Danbury, Connecticut, and this most recent episode of Tent Talks Tunes. Actually, let's get the semaphore correct. Tent Talks Tunes. Yes. Good to be back in the video saddle here. I was absent for a week because I had some so-called real-world business to take care of, and it has since been taken care of, so now I have landed safely in the nest, ready to wax rhapsodic about tunes and music and give you some opinions and thoughts and the occasional feeling while we're at it. So, greetings. Let's see if we get some people to tune in here. Excuse me while I cough. Yeah, there we go. Figure we'll get all the various, excuse me, it's the arid winter air here in Connecticut. It's playing havoc with my larynx. I don't know if the internet's being really weird, but I can't actually see if anybody's tuned in right now. So I'm going to assume everybody is, and I'm going to assume everything's going well. It's like playing a gig without a monitor, you know. It's kind of get used to it, but it's just weird. So yeah, various announcements and things we're going to knock out of the way first. I'd like to talk about the mail I've gotten since I logged in last. Got some pretty cool mail, including the latest issue of the Bridge and Tunnel Crowd out of New Haven. The usual wacky and wonderful mix of history and politics and art, delivered with a totally tongue-in-cheek style-y, which is great. Maybe they're kidding, maybe they're not. I don't know, but I do like it. I like it an awful lot. This is a very, very cool magazine. And, yeah, I'm not going to say another word because, as it seems is always the case, the internet right here live on Facebook is being extremely weird. So I'm going to ask you guys to bear with me for 1 second. I'm going to lean over and I'm going to tune into myself on a different browser and see if I can actually see myself and see people tuned in and people watching me and all that. Okay, looks like I am live. Google Chrome won't show me, but Firefox will. So, great. I will now stop dilly-dallying around and continue onward. Yes, Bridge and Tunnel Crowd. Got it. They mailed it directly to my P.O. Box. P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut, 06470, which is also where I expect to be taking delivery of a brand new webcam. Yes, a brand new high-def webcam with autofocus. So next time I lean forward and shove things into the lens, you'll actually be able to read them and see them clearly instead of this pixelated haze that we've all sort of gotten used to here on Tent Talks Tunes. So P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut, 06470. Send me something. I love getting things. How about this? Postcard. A mysterious and enigmatic postcard from my main man Dennis at Jackhammer Records in Mobile, Alabama. Salutations to the esteemed Minister of Propaganda. Greetings from Osaka by way of Alabama. How cool is that? The U.S. Postal Service, as we can see, does still work very well. Got something really cool in person, too. As you probably guessed if you've tuned into this program more than once, I love records. I am so into vinyl, it's ridiculous. And my main dog, John Amato, gave me a really cool record by this band called Satanic Panic 81. It's the soundtrack to a movie called Mara. Don't know if the movie exists or not, but the soundtrack does. Look at this great hot pink vinyl. Ooh, that's fancy schmancy. It's really cool, sort of like Goblin, John Carpenter, early 80s synth horror soundtrack music. Very, very atmospheric, very evocative, and very well done. So I was quite pleased to put this on my turntable and give it a spin. And theoretically, once I get back on the radio on WNHU West Haven, and I can do my radio show weekly as I had become accustomed to doing for many, many years, I'll be playing this. So that's really cool. Thank you, John. And thank you anybody who wants to send me tunes to P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut, 06470. For the wonderful day when I do get back on the radio in NHU, I'll have stuff to play. I don't guarantee airplay on everything that people will send me, but I do guarantee you I'll listen to it and I'll give it a fair judgment. And if I like it, I'll play it. You got my word of honor, because I am Malcolm Tent. Now here's an update on something I talked about a few weeks ago on Tent Talks Tunes. There's been some developments on this, I used the term earlier, mysterious and enigmatic, completely unknown Rolling Stones 8-track. A very weird version of the Hot Rocks 8-track, which is not on Abco Records or London Records, but is on Rolling Stones Records. Even with my crappy camera, you should be able to see the Rolling Stones logo and the Rolling Stones spine. This particular issue is not known. It's completely undocumented. There's no evidence of it anywhere. It's not in any discography. It's not on Discogs. I scoured the internet looking for references to it. There's nothing anywhere. There's nothing about this Rolling Stones Hot Rocks 8-track. And no one's been able to give me a clue about this. So I actually put on my thinking cap and I sent out an email to Goldmine magazine. Goldmine being the preeminent record collectors magazine for decades. I've been reading it forever. Great magazine. And it turns out that the editor I wrote to knows me, has shopped at my table at various record shows, and used to come into the store, Trash American style. The guy's a trashy over at Goldmine. How cool is that? So we commiserated a little bit, and he put me in touch with a writer for Goldmine who does the price guides in various magazine articles for the online and print version of Goldmine. And so this dude and I went back and forth for a number of emails, and he took the position, maybe he was being devil's advocate, I don't know, he took the position that this was not a legit item, that it's a fake of some sort. I take the position that it's real, and it was actually a really good dialogue because he made me defend my position. I had to go through point by point exactly why I think this is a legitimate, authentic product. And we sort of kind of reached a draw. You know, he couldn't disprove that it was real. I couldn't prove that it was real. So I was like, you know, I gotta know. So I remembered a friend of mine, a guy named Gary, who is Chubby Checker's manager. And Chubby Checker's catalog is now owned by Abco Records, which is the label that owns the Rolling Stones catalog up to the years in question with this item right here. So I figured I would talk to Gary, since he's tight with Abco, and see if he knew anything. He's also a giant mark for the Stones. So I talked to him. He didn't know anything about it, but he put me in touch with this woman named Terry Landy, who is Abco Records archivist and chief audio engineer. And she was very friendly, very professional, receptive, wanted to know more. I sent her a bunch of photos, made a brief outline as to why I think it's real, and we went back and forth a little bit, and now the ball's in her court. And that was a few weeks ago, and I've been like just doing all kinds of stuff in the so-called real world, so I haven't had a chance to follow up with Terry Landy to get her opinion on whether or not this thing is real. She said that they have a huge archive of Rolling Stones 8-track cartridges at Abco, but they're all packed away. And I have no doubt that she's got a lot higher priority things to do than go chasing after an 8-track. But I'm going to do some follow-up. And we're going to see, hopefully once and for all, what the deal is with this mysterious Rolling Stones Hot Rocks 8-track. And if anybody on the internet research team wants to scour it, catalog number on it is TP25999. Same deal on this crappy camera. You can't see it very well. On my new camera, you will. TP25999, which is very consistent with a regular Rolling Stones catalog number on Rolling Stones records. If anybody can find something out, please let me know. Post a comment, whether here on Facebook or on my YouTube channel. Because it's these musical mysteries that keep things very interesting. That keep things very interesting for all of us out here in frantic fandom. In the, once again, alleged real world. I didn't call it the real world. It wasn't my idea. Somebody else said that this was the real world. I just live in it. I don't know. To the real world. And let's take a quick look at the other server. I'm really nervous about this because I'm not seeing any reaction whatsoever from anybody over here on Google Chrome. And absolutely nothing is happening. So I'm a little bit weirded out about this. So here's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to abort temporarily here, because I have no idea if I'm actually going out live or not, and nobody's interacting at all. So I have a kind of a bad feeling that, well, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to keep going. Even if for some reason it's not going out live, I can still archive it, and you can see this on my YouTube channel. Okay? Okay, we're going to keep going. Rule number 1, if you're playing a gig, don't stop. I will now slip in today's commercial message, and then we're going to get to the meat of the matter, which is falling down a rabbit hole triggered by a Bill Wyman record. Malcolm Tent Power Duo 7-inch, featuring me, that's me right there, and a guy named David Kendrick, who was the drummer for Sparks during Sparks' fabled New Wave era. He played on 2 of my favorite Sparks records, Womp That Sucker and Angst in My Pants. He's the drummer on those 2 albums. You know the Sparks song with Jane Whelan, Cool Places? You're never gonna cool it down. That's David Kendrick, baby, playing drums on that. When he was done with Sparks, he ended up joining Devo. And you know me and Devo. Ooh, I got a loose nut in my head when it comes to Devo. He was a member of Devo from 1987 to 1996. He played on the Smooth Noodle Maps album. He played on the Total Devo album. He played on the Now It Can Be Told album. And lots of compilation and soundtrack music up until 1996. I cut a record with this dude live in rehearsal doing a couple of Devo songs. I made an edition of 25 copies. There's only 25 of these in the second edition made. It's square. It's transparent. It's in glorious lo-fi mono. And I made 25 copies of this only in anticipation of the Devo Fan Festival this year, which of course was canceled since it's 2020 and everything's been canceled. So I've got the records that I made for the event. There's only 25 of them. I wouldn't mind selling them. So that's the commercial. If you look up my label, there it is, TPOS, that's TPOS, TPOS, on Discogs and Facebook, it's listed. You can also get them direct from me. PM me, and I'll hook you up with the fabulous Malcolm Tent Power Duo featuring David Kendrick of Devo and Sparks, and me. 25 copies. Wow. Pretty damn cool, I think. Even if it weren't me, I think that was pretty cool. Alright, gang, now, today's topic. Thank you for so patiently sitting in and waiting it out. Today's topic is, what kind of a rabbit hole does a 15-year-old fall down when he buys a Bill Wyman solo record for $1.99? Sometime around the year 1979-ish. Maybe if I hit the comments button, I'll see something. Fuck it, I don't know. For me, the story in a lot of ways begins in the library of American High School in Hialeah, Florida. Yes, I went to a high school called American High School, AHS. Home of the Patriots. School colors, red, white, and blue. Can't make it up, kids. That's where I went to high school. And high school, as I'm sure you know, was mostly a grim, relentless, depressing affair. But there was one really nice, bright spot, and that was the school library. Our librarian, her name was Mrs. Gilliard, I think. I want to say Mrs. Gilliard. Don't quote me on that. If my BFF Jill is tuned in, maybe she can helped clarify that because we went to high school together. Mrs. Gilliard had a very well curated library. For me, in no small part because she had lots of music magazines and lots of music books. And there's one music book she had in the reference section, the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Rock, from the editors of New Musical Express. I just about wore that copy out at American High School's library. It was a reference book, so I couldn't check it out, but I would read it every single day before first period class. I'd read it over and over and over again, reading about all these great bands I'd never heard of before, and like really cool in-depth articles on a lot of people. It really whetted my appetite for more reference books. So right around that time, I discovered my very first ever rock and roll book, The Illustrated Record of the Rolling Stones by Roy Carr. This is the actual copy that I bought right before 9th grade. You can see that it has been read to death. There's hardly a single page in here that's actually stuck together. It's just a big collection of loose pages now at this point. But this is the original book I bought in 9th grade. And this is the same book I talked about earlier on one of my episodes of Tent Talks Tunes that triggered my lifelong love and fascination with bootleg LPs. Because there's an appendix in here that talks about bootlegs. There's also an appendix in here that I studied pretty carefully. Look at that, 2 pages that are actually stuck together. Extracurricular activities, including Bill Wyman. He's got a couple of pages in here about Bill Wyman and the various bands he produced and his solo albums and stuff. So I kind of filed that away in the trap and was therefore quite delighted and very intrigued when I was prowling the cutout bins at Specs Music in the Westland Mall, as I always did. And we've talked about that on Tent Talks Tunes, about how much I love the cutout bins, where all of the unsold records would get the corner cut off or have a little notch carved into the cover and be sold at a discount price. I'm not joking, kids. I found some of the best records of my entire life in the cutout bins. So often because they were like really weird or eccentric or avant-garde or bizarre, and Mr. and Mrs. America didn't want to buy them, so they ended up in the cheap bins. Yoko Ono, her entire catalog was in the cheap bins at some point. Apparently Sun Ra's entire catalog got dumped in the cheap bins. I mean, that's why the cheap bins were so great, man. You'd find Sun Ra and Yoko Ono for like $1.99, and you would also find this record I saw in the book. Bill Wyman Monkey Grip. Yeah, I was big into the Stones. Still am. Huge mark for the Stones. And I always thought that Bill Wyman was really cool. In fact, I'll go on record right now saying that Bill Wyman is the coolest member that the Rolling Stones ever had. You can have all the Mick Jagger you want and all the jet set cocaine lifestyle you want. Bill Wyman, this dude's an archaeologist. Literally an archaeologist. He goes on field digs. He's uncovered artifacts. That's cool. Dude's got his own brand of metal detector. That's cool. Photographer. The dude's a photographer. That's cool. I mean, look. I can relate to that. Got my camera right here. I like to take pictures. Dude's a photographer. The man hung out with Marc Chagall. That's cool. I mean, come on. Mick Jagger's viewpoint is very well represented. Bill Wyman's is not. And I think Bill Wyman's is probably a lot more interesting than Mick Jagger, because Mick Jagger would never be seen with a shovel in his hand, let alone digging ancient Roman coins out of the soil of Mother England. So I've always had this affinity for Bill Wyman, also because I'm a bass player. That's my natural instrument, is the bass. Bill Wyman's a bass player. Very weird, unorthodox style of bass playing that Bill Wyman's got. I personally got thrown out of a band once for emulating Bill Wyman's bass playing style, with the glissandos and the swoops and the slides and the unorthodox fills. They chucked me out because I was playing like Bill Wyman. That's pretty cool. You got to admit, when you get thrown out of a band because of your musical affinity, That's cool. I didn't know any of this when I saw the Bill Wyman record for $1.99 at Specs Music. I just knew that it was Bill Wyman from the Stones. I saw it in the book. It's $1.99. The $1.99 bin had been very good to me. So I bought the record, not knowing what to expect. You know, remember, I'm in the ninth grade, 14-something years old. I was right off the bat attracted to the song titles. I Want to Get Me a Gun. Track 1, side 1. That was enough to hook me right there. Crazy Woman. Pussy? I didn't even know what that meant. But I knew I wasn't supposed to know. This was forbidden knowledge. It was right there. Right there. Look at that. You can't see it on my cheap camera, but it's right there. 14-year-old male read that and said that alone is worth $1.99. Monkey Grip Glue, What a Blow, I'll Pull You Through. I just knew I wanted to hear this record. Took it home, played it, loved it. Love this record. This is a really, really good record. This is, if anything, more than anything, it's a producer's record. This is Bill Wyman on production, just cutting loose, man, with great horn charts and keyboard arrangements, all kinds of instrumentation, everything from 12-string guitars to dobros and the horn section, backing vocals. He's got a core band on here based around Dallas Taylor and Danny Korchmar. That's them on the sleeve. And it's a good record. It's just a really good record. If there's any weaknesses in it, it's in the vocal department. And Wyman himself said that he was really shy in front of the mics and so never really cut loose with the vocals. And even so, Wyman's got a fairly idiosyncratic vocal style. So right off the bat, it takes a little bit of warming up to and a little getting used to. But, dude, it's good. It's good. There's not hardly a bad song on this album. I really like this album. And it's got just a little bit of that wacky, eccentric British sense of humor that I love so much. And I will say also it's far better than any solo record Mick Jagger ever put out. There it is. It's not in writing, but it's on the permanent record here on YouTube and Facebook. This is better than any solo album that Mick Jagger ever put out. I think it's better than the Keith Richards solo albums too. You know why? Because Keith Richards solo albums are predictable rock and roll. Predictable rock and roll. Not much predictable about this. It's great. Nothing but curveballs. And it's out there and it's affordable. I recommend it. Right around the same time too, we had his second solo album, Stone Alone. This record's got some powerful grooves on it, man. Great version of the old Calypso song, If You Want to Be Happy. The way that song opens up, it explodes out of the speakers. It is just like muscular, dude. Muscular. Awesome production. This has more of like a coked out and drunk LA vibe to it. 1976. It's kind of like Pussycats by Harry Nilsson. It's like some of Ringo's later solo albums. It's got that boozy vibe to it. And Bill Wyman, I'm pretty sure, was straight edge, or at least pretty close to it. But it's got that feel to it. Vocals are still idiosyncratic, maybe a little more confident, but still idiosyncratic. I love it. Great tune by Danny Korchmar called Feet. And unlike the first album, which had a core band, this is like all stars. This has got everybody from Dr. John to Peter Frampton to Ronnie Wood. Bob Welch is on it. Pointer Sisters again. Just a bunch of all stars. And it's really, really cool. Maybe not as musically adventurous as Monkey Grip. But it's still better than Primitive Cool by about 400%. It's still better than the Expensive Winos by about 500%. I'm Malcolm 10. I have spoken. I'm known for my controversial opinions. I stand by them. Widely available at reasonable prices. Track it down. Get it. If you like good music and you want to hear top-notch production, one of my hobby horses, baby. Love that album. Wow, all because of one page in one book. Isn't that something? Now, concurrent to all that, also because of the Roy Carr's illustrated record, I already mentioned that I discovered and fell in love with the concept of bootleg vinyl. Bootleg vinyl at the time was very hard to find and very expensive. So imagine my delight when, maybe a couple years later, I was reading Trouser Press magazine, and that's another formative source of information, Trouser Press magazine, and in their classified ads, there was a little something from a guy in Arizona who advertised live concert cassette tapes, studio outtakes, radio broadcasts. Send $1 for catalog. Sent the guy $1, got like a 10-page mimeographed 8.5 by 11 set of sheets of paper, and just had all this stuff by all these bands. And the cassettes I think were $8 each plus shipping. Still expensive, but not as expensive as a $20 bootleg LP. And he had a lot of stuff that you just couldn't find on bootleg LP. Something that he had in the Rolling Stones section looked very intriguing. It was called Satanic Majesty's Outtakes. Ooh. Pretty sure I've talked about how their Satanic Majesty's Request is one of my favorite Stones albums. It's my second favorite Stones album. I love that album. In a nutshell, the biggest sin of Satanic Majesties is that it doesn't sound like the Rolling Stones. And it's been dismissed over and over as being a Sgt. Pepper ripoff and bad psychedelia. Bullshit! It's a heavily Northern African, Moroccan influenced album. And as such, it rules. Listen to it with those ears. Think Morocco, think Northern Africa, think Far East. And all of a sudden, Satanic Majesties makes a lot more sense. Great album. And of course, I being the fan and the scholar and the nut job that I am, I wanted to hear the outtakes. I wanted to hear the stuff that didn't make it onto the album for some reason. Because that's fascinating. That's when you really... It's just really fascinating. The lure of the forbidden and the extra dimensions that the outtakes offer. It's really cool. And the ability to say, hey, look what I got, I like that a lot. There was a song on this cassette of Satanic Majesty's Outtakes that didn't have a name or anything, but it had this really haunting keyboard part. It sounded like it was being played on like a toy piano almost. And it had this really punchy horn chart and tablas and this real chunky, nasty sounding rhythm guitar. And this vocals about, he will never see the light, he will never die, he will never understand the reason. And it was like really cool. It was like very kind of like menacingly psychedelic. And I thought, why didn't this make it onto Satanic Majesties? This song is really, really good. It's extremely lo-fi, too. It's really hard to make out, but you could hear just enough to know that there was a killer track in there somewhere. And I like to have worn that tape out, playing that song over and over and over again. And so, fast forward almost a decade later to when I had my record store, Trash American Style, and I had just gotten in some really cool compilations of British psychedelic music. And I was just playing one randomly, and all of a sudden that song pumped out. I was like, what is this? This is the song of that... This is it. This is the song on that Satanic Majesty's tape. What is this? This is not the Stones. What is this? I was like, I about fell out of my chair when I heard it. Here was the song in glorious high fidelity. And it wasn't the Stones. Who was it? Looked on the cover. There it is. A group called The End. And the song called Shades of Orange. Well, I do believe I saw a reference to that in the Roy Carr book, didn't I? In the extracurricular activities, I made a pretty quick dive. Yeah, there it is, right there on the extracurricular activities page. with all of Bill Wyman's production work, The End, Shades of Orange. And he talks about how The End eventually morphed into a group called Tucky Buzzard. Interesting, interesting, interesting. So I always had that in the back of my mind. I wanted to find the original single of Shades of Orange by The End, but it's a rare one. It's hard to find. It's one of those holy grail records of British psychedelia. Copies do not come cheap. But a few years back, something good actually came out of Record Store Day. You know my opinion of Record Store Day. My opinion of Record Store Day is very low. Nothing but a cash grab by the major labels. Yes, it benefits independent record stores, and for that, we're glad. We commend that, because independent record stores are where it's at. All good music comes from the independents, whether it's record stores, labels, or bands. So for that, cool. For the completely, typically greedy, short-sighted, absolutely avaristic, if that's even a word, cash grab that it is for the major labels, thumbs down, baby. I don't like it. I hate the major labels anyway. I always have. Hate them. And what they've done to Record Store Day makes me puke. Except for the fact that they actually did something really good, which was a double album anthology of The End. Produced by Bill Wyman. It's got the original very rare album, Introspection, and a complete bonus disc of outtakes and stuff called Retrospection. And Shades of Orange is on it. And when I was talking about Monkey Grip, I talked about how that one's a producer's album. This is the perfect combination of producer and band. The End, great British psychedelic band. And the psychedelia, you can tell by the cover, right? British psychedelia, if you've noticed or listened or paid any attention to it, if you're even into it that much, British psychedelia is like an entirely different strain of psychedelia from American psychedelia. It's a little bit gentler. It's a little more pastoral. It's not quite as bam in your face as American psychedelia is. It's definitely more like flower music, if you will. It's airier. It's just not as completely electrified and go, go, go as American psychedelia is. It's a whole different animal. It's really wonderful. And you can get lost in British psychedelia because there are literally hundreds and hundreds of records that came out. And the album by The End is one of them. Killer album from start to finish. The End were a great band. Bill Wyman's production is extremely tasty. And this being a Record Store Day issue, I'm not sure if it's still in print anymore. But also knowing the outright cynicism of the major labels, I'm sure there's a version of it that has since come out that's not on colored vinyl, or maybe doesn't have such deluxe packaging, or maybe it's on CD. Got to admit, that's pretty cool vinyl, though. They did do a very nice job on this one, I got to admit. As much as their cynicism and greed annoys me, and their hyperinflated prices piss me off, sometimes you do get bang for your buck. And this double album's really good. I was very happy. I haven't seen one of these yet since the one copy I picked up at a record store on the Shoreline. So The End, Introspection, Shades of Orange, produced by Bill Wyman. Now, because of this record and Roy Carr's liner notes, he talks about other bands that evolved into The End and therefore into Tucky Buzzard. So we might as well talk about Tucky Buzzard for a second, because that's the only other vinyl I've ever come across. It's produced by Bill Wyman. This is another example of a kick-ass band with great production. Tucky Buzzard, I mean, look at that cover. I'm sure you can see it. That's not a microphone, kids. That's a whiskey bottle. Woo! That's the lead singer of Tucky Buzzard tying one on. And I'm straight edge, baby. But that's just a great image. Tucky Buzzard, that brand of all British, no-nonsense, heads-down, mindless boogie, baby. Except Tucky Buzzard are not mindless. They're very intelligent. Very intelligent, very knowing, very smart. They're kind of like Savoy Brown, but with extra brain power. Tucky Buzzard. Man. In the UK, their stuff came out on Purple Records, which was Deep Purple's label. Which is really weird, because it seems like anybody who was ever on Deep Purple's label ended up either in Deep Purple or Rainbow or Black Sabbath. And none of these guys did. None of the personnel on Tucky Buzzard ever did anything, as far as I know, other than this band. And Tucky Buzzard had evolved from the End, and the End had evolved from all kinds of earlier British beat groups, such as Moon's Train. I believe that the Warren Davis Monday Band was part of that family tree. And this gets back to the article in which Roy Carr talks about all the records that Bill Wyman produced. He started producing records in 1965. And so I, using the wonders of YouTube, started looking them up and got like an entire CD's worth of stuff that Bill Wyman produced, starting with this girl, I can say girl, she was a young girl, Bobby Miller, a record from January 1965, all the way up to this dude named John Walker in 1973. And all these bands like Joey Page, John Lee's Groundhogs, The Preachers, Moon Train. A lot of the early stuff is definitely bog standard British beat singles fodder. I think some of the earlier sides are fairly indistinguished. It's fairly non-distinguished. But you can hear the styles evolve as they go on. By the time you get into Wyman's sides from 67, like the Moon's Train and the Hamilton and the Movement and the Warren Davis Monday Band, you can hear the techniques really starting to come into place. Bill Wyman had great sense of horns. He's got horns on just about all of these songs here, and all of his horn charts are just perfect. They're very tasty, very succinct. They fit right into the overall sonic picture, if you will. They fit very comfortably in with the music. They don't overpower anything. And you can hear a lot of tasty horn work on the End record as well. Might be Bill Wyman's strongest suit as producer, is his ability to write and produce for horns. There's a group on here called The Preachers. They came out in 1965. Featured a young guitar player named Peter Frampton. What do you know? And the drummer was a guy named Tony Chapman. For all you Stones scholars out there, you might recognize Tony Chapman as being a drummer in a very early proto version of the Rolling Stones. And Peter Frampton and Tony Chapman, after the Preachers, started a band called The Herd, and The Herd eventually evolved into Humble Pie, one way or another. So that's pretty cool. You know, Bill Wyman was there right at the very beginning of that in 1965, with their single called Hole in My Soul, backed with Too Old in the Head. Hole in My Soul very much reminds me of Terry Knight and the Pack, which is the Michigan precursor of Grand Funk. And Terry Knight and the Pack had this incredible ability to sort of rip off styles and make uncanny rewrites of like Bob Dylan songs or Yardbird songs. Preachers are kind of like that. Very humble beginnings, but obviously Peter Frampton ended up doing pretty well for himself. And something about a lot of these other bands that I mentioned earlier is that they feature a lot of the personnel who ended up in the End and by convoluted methods later in Tucky Buzzard. There's a definite line from the early stuff to the 70s stuff. This dude Peter Gosling was a frequent collaborator with Bill Wyman, and he's on a lot of these sides, either as a co-writer or a player or maybe a co-producer. So yeah, Bill Wyman, man, all the way back to 1965. And of course, after he quit the Stones, he did Willie and the Poor Boys and did a lot of other cool stuff. Became an archaeologist and a metal detector and a photographer and a patron of the arts. And a lot of these records that he produced, some while he was in the Stones, actually all while he was in the Stones, from various decades, are really cool. So Tucky Buzzard, The End, and maybe some of these other really weird 45s from days gone by that he produced. Well worth seeking out, and there's a lot of good music to be heard there that never really got the attention it deserves as far as I'm concerned. And of course, talking about bands like Tucky Buzzard, who are very intelligent rock bands and boogie bands, automatically leads to groups like Pato. When you talk about Pato, you immediately start talking about the Ruddles. And if you end up talking about Pato and the Ruddles, you might end up talking about Tempest, because they all feature a guy named Ollie Housel, who is the best goddamn lead guitar player you never heard of. Somebody said that Ollie Housel might not have been the greatest lead guitar player in the world, but he was certainly in the top 2. Listen to Pato, listen to Tempest, and you tell me. Ollie Housel. Damn. Damn, damn, damn. Definitely from the same school of British rock as Tucky Buzzard, brought to you by Bill Wyman. And that's it, kids. I'm done marking out about Bill Wyman. Wow. Great stuff. As always, I invite you guys to do some research. Go on the internet, look up all this stuff. Please leave comments, either here on Facebook or on my YouTube channel, because this show will be uploaded to YouTube and be archived there forever and ever and ever. Kindly don't forget the Malcontent Power Duo 7-inch. It's square. It's hand-lathed. There's only 25 of them in the second edition. You can find it on Discogs, eBay, or directly from me. So, thank you everybody for tuning in. Thanks for turning on, and thanks for dropping out of your mind with Tent Talks Tunes. I do hope to be back in about 167 hours. So keep it sane, people. Don't lose your heads. Until we meet again, this is Malcontent saying so long from the Nutmeg State. Or I should say, from the Nutmeg State.